If you are a beginner producer, this video is going to take you from knowing nothing to making insane hard beats that will actually sound industry ready. I made a shorter version of this before and a lot of you said I was going too fast. So this time I'm explaining everything, from the basics of FL Studio to laying down melodies and hard drums. So open FL Studio if you want, follow along, and let's get into it. This is how FL Studio loads up, and it can look like a spaceship, but once you learn how to use it, you're going to be really fast. Mine right now is looking blue because I changed theme by going to options, theme settings, and you can use whatever you want except from the white one. But now let's start talking about the basics of FL Studio. This first window that we have here is called the playlist, as you can see here. We can open it by clicking this button, and this is where we are going to lay down our beat or song. Here we can place patterns, that is just a container of melodies, or we can drag audio WAV files from our PC or from the browser here. And in this section we can choose between the patterns and the audio that we added. The next thing we need to understand is the pattern. To open it, we can click on this third icon here and select all, so we can see all the sounds we have in the project. We can delete these two, and this is where we're going to add our melody. But how do we actually add sounds? There are two main ways. The first one is by adding a VST. A VST is basically an application that you open in FL Studio that will generate the sound. So let's click plus, and FL Studio comes with a lot of free ones, so let's open Morphine for example. In all of these plugins, there will be a part where we can choose the preset. In this case is here, and we can choose different sounds to play. The second way of adding sounds is by using one-shots. For example, in my Phoenix suite, I have a one-shot kit, and we can just drag it here, and we can use it to play. Right now I'm using my MIDI keyboard, but if you don't have one, you can click on this icon and it will let you use your PC keyboard as a MIDI keyboard. Right now we played using keyboards, but how do we actually place the notes? Well, we can right click here and select piano roll, or click on this icon here, but I prefer the first version so we are sure we are opening the piano roll of this sound. For now, let's lay down a random melody. We will come back to this later. By the way, to copy this, I'm using Ctrl B, that duplicates it. Right now, if we press play, we are playing in the pattern, not the playlist. And to switch that, we can click here. So selecting song is going to play the playlist, where we place the pattern, so it's gonna output the same sound. We can use Ctrl B also here to copy stuff. But what if we add two melodies? Let's go into Morphine and again add some random notes. Really simple, just to show you. As you can see, since we are working in the same pattern, we can see in gray the notes of the other melody, and that's really useful. Now let's go back to the playlist, and as you can see, they are playing together. But what if we want to play them at different times? Well, we can right click on pattern and select split by channel. In that way, it's going to split them, and we can have different sections. That's really important because in music, we want sections with higher energy and more instruments, and sometimes less energy. And that's called arrangement, and we will talk about it later. We are almost finished with the basics of FL Studio because now we need to talk about the BPM. So music in general has a speed and is measured in BPM. That means beats per minute. So if we set the BPM at 60, it's going to be 1 beat every second because in 1 minute we have 60 seconds. To hear it, we can click on this icon that is going to activate the metronome. 120 is going to be the double. If you go faster, the melody goes faster. For the BPM, it really depends on the genre you're making. I'm trying to make a future hard beat, so let's go at 124, 125, but there is not a magic number. And as you can see, it's going to play every beat. So this is called beat. And 4 of them create a bar, so now you know also some terminology. This is a bar. This is another one. Let's delete everything and start making our melody. Okay, that's all for the basics of FL Studio. Now we can start making our melody. As I said, we can drag sounds or use a VST. I'm going to open again Morphine and find a keyboard that we like. Now, choosing the right sound is really important in trap beats and can really make a difference between a good beat and a bad beat. And to learn sound selection, you need to experiment a lot, practice a lot, listen to music, and also follow your own taste. For example, this sound, except we are making a Pirates theme, is not gonna be usable. Oh, this one is really good. I don't know, it feels warm to me, and there's a little texture that I really like, so I'm going to use that sound. Oh, and by the way, if you need some fresh sounds, make sure to check out Riffle. It will be discounted for the next 200 producers, so don't miss out. So let's click again piano roll, and now we need to talk about music theory a bit. But if you're a beginner, you just need to understand what scales are, because they're really useful. So let's place all the notes in an octave. As you can see here, we have 12 notes, and the 13th is going to be A again. So these 12 notes are always repeating. They start from A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There are 12 because we have these notes in between that are the black notes of the piano, and we can just consider them as normal notes. And this interval of 12 notes is called octave. As you can see next to the note name we have a number, and that's the octave number. They actually reset on C, and that's a bit of a long story, but as you can see we have 12 notes in the 5 octave, and then the 13th is going to be in the 6. And the higher we go in octave, also if it's the same note, is going to sound higher pitched. Vice versa, if we go lower, it's going to sound lower pitched. So if you use all these notes, we're going to probably create something out of key, because they will not sound good together. So they created scales that are just pattern of notes that we know will sound good. To make an analogy, let's take a painter that chooses a scale of color before painting, and chooses colors that look good together and create a certain emotion. That's the same thing we are doing in music, except that the scales are already made. So if you right click on this note icon here, we can see all the scales. They are quite a lot, but don't worry, the most used ones are the minor and the major one. The major is used a lot in pop, country, rock music too, but sounds too happy for trap. So in 99% of the cases, we're going to use the minor natural. Let's select it and select a root note. Let's go with C. Now FL Studio highlighted all the notes we can use. There are only 7, but it's enough. And as you can see, we have a pattern. We place one note, we skip one. We place 2 notes, we skip one. But now let's try to change the starting point. So we selected C as a root note. In fact, we can consider the root note as the starting point of the scale. And now select D. If we go up to semitones by clicking Shift and the arrow up, we are still in the scale. So the pattern is always the same, and changing the root note changes only the starting point. Okay, now that we know that, we can just place the notes. Another trick is that by using these 2 notes that are close together in hard beats is going to create that tension that we need. And I can't really explain how to make a melody, because that's where your creativity needs to kick in and you need to follow what you hear. Right now I hear again D. And if you don't hear anything, it's not a problem, it will come over time. Okay, that's good. Now hard beats are really repetitive, so we can click Ctrl B and copy it. And that's already a pretty nice melody. Let's add some notes on top. And right now I pitched it down 1 octave using Ctrl and the arrow up or down. And by the way, to duplicate them like this, I use Shift and the left click. Another thing, the length of the notes is really important. You can select everything with Ctrl A. Notes longer, we're going to have a different result. It's light, but now it's more cohesive. Okay, that's a good main melody, that's enough. We don't have to overcomplicate it, especially for hard beats. And we can add some effects on this. To add them, we can click on this icon here. That is going to open the mixer. Here we have a lot of channels, and we can add effects by clicking here. But we need to link this sound to that channel. So we can do that by clicking on these 3 dots and then going up or down with the mouse. So let's link it to the one. And if we play, we're going to hear the sound. That's because the insert one is linked to the master, and we are going to hear the master. If we remove this arrow, we can't hear anything. To add an effect, you can use one of these 10 slots. Just click on it and you can select from a bunch of them. The most used effects are reverb, that is going to make it sound like it's in a big hole. And in all effects we have 2 main signals. The dry, that is the channel without effect. So if we have only the dry, we're not going to hear any difference. And the wet, that is only the effect. And we combine these 2 together, creating a really nice effect. Another thing we can add is the delay. Let's open the fruity delay 2. There is also the fruity delay 3, but this one is simpler to use. Let's select the feedback to ping pong, so the pen goes from left to right. Here we can change the time. No, I liked it before. And here the volume. Let's make it subtle. And this knob is really important because we can make it mono on the right, or more stereo, so wider on the left. Yeah, that's so good. These effects are changing how the melody sounds, but there are also creative effects. So let's click on more plugins and search for gross beat. If you right click here, we can select a lot of different banks. I like the momentary. This lower orange part is going to create volume automation. So if you have something like this, it's going to be gated. Let's remove it. And on the top there, FX modifying the melody. So for example, we have half speed, that is really good. Ooh! Let's lower the mix, so it's going to blend the two together. So now it sounds fuller. Okay, I really like this main melody. Now to be more organized, I'm going to render these. To do that, we can select them, click Ctrl C. Here we have some settings, like we can leave the tail or cut it exactly on time if you use cut. Let's leave it for now. So as you can see, it's going to leave the tail. But let's remove it. By the way, to cut, I'm using the cut tool, and you can use C to do that. So now it's rendered, the effects are already applied. But if you double click here, we can modify how it sounds. For example, we can reverse it. Now we get this because we left the tail. We need to adjust this. And another important thing here is the pitch. So if we move it down, as you can see on the top left corner, we can see we are going down 200 cents, and 100 cent is a note. So we went down 2 notes. That's hard. So if we go back to our MIDI and we go down 2, we are in C minor right now. So that will sound the same. Except this one is reversed, but they sound the same. Okay, that's a really good starting point. Once you have these, honestly, you have done most of the work. Because from these, we can build an entire beat. Let's copy this and make this one unique by clicking here and selecting Make Unique. Now it's a different audio file, and if we modify this one, it's not going to affect the other one. So let's select Stretch. I suggest to use Stretch for both of them. So if we change the BPM, they're not going to change their length. And let's try to stretch this one. So we can click on this arrow and stretch like this. If we pitch it down 12, it's going to be the octave higher, so always the same scale, always the same root note. So let's see if they sound good together. Yeah, it's a bit too messy. Let's try to stretch it again. Oh, we can create a good accent with this. Let's cut it here. Let's link it to a different channel and add some delay. Oh, I like that. And so reverb too. But it needs to be lower in volume. This slider here lets you set the volume. Okay, now that we have that, we can have a section, for example the hook, where we have more energy with this texture. And the verse, where we need less energy without it. Now let's create a new pattern again, because I want to add some other melodies. We can build on top of this and enhance how this sounds. For example, let's add some piano bass notes. If you have FL Studio, you should find these specs in the browser, and there are some free instruments. If you go to keyboard, I like to use the close grand piano, better than FL keys, by the way. So as we said, right now we are in C, and in our beats we are not changing chords. So if you are working in the lower octaves, we need to use the root note. Let's go down to C2. Oh, that's good. Let's add another note and lower a bit the velocity. The velocity is basically changing the volume. And shift left click to copy it here. That's fine. If you change chords, you need to follow the chords with the bass notes, especially in more emotional beats. So if you want a video about it, I will make one. This is really good, but we are missing some ambient sounds. And we can achieve that by adding pads or orchestral instruments, for example choirs or strings. Let's use a choir from the orchestral pack. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, let's go to our first melody we made. Let's copy it and paste it in this new pattern. As you can see, we are using these notes. So now we can create a counter melody using those notes. And in the majority of cases, this is going to sound good. Ooh, let's copy this. Let's create some variation at the end, maybe go up instead of down. Yeah, it's subtle, but creates that variation we need. And on this we can add some reverb. And make it wider too. Okay, that's really good. Now we can add another accent. To do that, I'm going to open Labs. That is free, by the way. If you don't have it, I suggest you to download it. For example, this cello sounds fire. And let's try to use it again as an accent without overcomplicating anything. So instead of placing the note at the start, let's shift this on the second bar, for example. Okay, that's fire. The last thing we need is to mix it well. Mixing too makes a difference between a good and a bad beat. And here there are no set rules, so you need to trust your ears. But in general, it's good to have the main melody louder than all the counter melodies and mix at around -12 dB. Another thing to think about is the pan. We can change the pan by using this knob here, and let's pan this a bit on the right. Yeah, that's really good because everything needs its own space. So if we have this on the right, we want the choir a bit on the left, for example. And now before arranging this, I always suggest to create a melody bus. So let's use the insert 7, rename it melody bus. And we can link all the melodies to it. We can use this arrow, just left click, and remove it from the master. Otherwise, we will hear this at a double volume. So we need to remove it from the master and link it here. Now all the melodies will go through the melody bus and we can add effects on the whole melody. I don't usually do too much, just add an EQ to remove the low end from. Oh, I didn't explain how an EQ works, but otherwise this video will become too long. We are basically choosing what parts of the frequencies we want and clicked on this 20 Hz cut, so we have this really handy shape. In default it will load like that. And it's good, but this one is faster if we only want to remove some frequencies. And I'm removing them because later we're going to add an 808 and it really needs its own space. But for now our melody is mixed well and we can finally arrange this. So let's split by channel for all these melodies and bring them all in. To arrange, let's do something like that and copy it with Ctrl B. In trap beats the arrangement is really simple. We usually start with an 8-bar intro, then a 16-bar hook, where usually the first part has a bit less energy than the second part, but again there are no set rules for this. Then 16 bar of the verse and then repeats. This really depends on the genre you're making, but for now let's keep the intro and start with the hook. Let's also add a marker. In the first part less energy, so let's remove the texture. That's good. And the second part has a bit more energy thanks to this accent. Then for the verse we usually remove stuff because that's where the artist really needs to rap and do his flows. So let's remove almost everything. The rapper has a lot of space. And on the second part let's bring back something. We kept the choir as an exclusive of the hook, so also the listener knows when we have the choir, that's the hook. But now it's time to add drums on this, and it's one of the most fun part. Let's create a new pattern and start with a clap. To find those sounds, we use kits, and I'm going to use my Imperial multi-kit. So let's go for a clap, find the one you like, and drag it in. Always link it to a mixer channel because we're going to add effects later. And the clap is always there, every half bar. Sit it higher. We can copy it with Ctrl B. We can keep it really simple because the rapper is going to get the tempo from these. But if we want, we can add variation. The most used spots for these are these two. Yeah, let's keep only one, maybe only at the end. Oh, it's me of the future, and I forgot to specify that when we play a clap, if we want to play exactly the same as what we just heard, we need to use C. C5 plays the same sound. The second thing we need are the hi-hats. I like to use really sharp ones like this. FL Studio here is really useful because we can right click and select finish 2 steps. And we already have the trap bounce. Now we can create the pattern on the piano roll, or we can use this channel rack that we have to create bounce faster. Ooh. And here there are no rules, you need to experiment and practice a lot. And with this I suggest to play around with the velocity. And let's copy this. And now we can add a roll. To change the grid, because right now it's too big to add a roll, this is the shortest the note can go. But if you go on this magnet icon, we can select, for example, half step or 1/3 step. I like 1/3 step. And with Ctrl B we can create a roll. And we don't have to overcomplicate it, just going to add a roll here. With Alt-R, we can randomize the pen, the velocity, and the pitch a bit, but only slightly, like if you look on the top left, only 1%. So that will sound a bit more realistic. By the way, if you want to see all these controls, you can select here pan, velocity, and modify them manually. Another important instrument in trap drums is the open hat. So right before the clap is good. The next instrument we usually have in these beats is the counter snare. Something like that. And again, the most used spots are these two, the same ones I showed you with the clap. But that's too much maybe, so... yeah, let's experiment a bit and use a different bounce. If you want, you can also add a roll at the end, why not? Unlimited ways you can add rolls, but let's go to 1/3 step. And do something like this, so 3 notes and then 1, 3 notes and then 1. And that's already a pretty good roll. Okay, that's really good, but before adding the 808, I need to explain to you how to make the drums hit hard. So let's create a drum bus and do the same thing we did with the melodies, so link all of them to it. It's always good to add some effects on the ball drums to blend them together. For example, we can add some distortion. Let's use the fruity fast distortion. The distortion is just making stuff sound louder and harder. Let's explain this like that. This is without, this is with it. Like right now they are really in the face, and that's what we want for drums in trap beats. We want the melody to be a little bit behind and the drums to be really in the face, so that we have space for the voice. And the last thing we can add here is some reverb. Select drum room and lower the mix. And now it's time for the 808. Basically everyone uses the spins. And remember to click cut itself, because if we don't click it, we place 2 notes and they will overlap. Like, that's not good. We want that note to stop before this one is hitting. Clicking cut itself is doing exactly that. Another thing to do before making your pattern is to go to the master and add a soft clipper, that is this one, without touching anything. This is going to avoid your final track to be clipping. If you want a video only about how to mix 808s, I will make one because it's a pretty long process. But already having a soft clipper here fixes the majority of the issues. And right now it isn't sounding as hard. It's because the volume is really low. Let's make this louder. For the 808 pattern, again, you need to be a bit creative and also listen to a lot of music to see what other people are doing. But the 2 most used patterns are these 2. And this one. I like this one for this beat, so let's keep it. Oh, and by the way, I'm using C because it's the root note right now. We were working in C, all these melodies are in C. If you are not changing chords, this just works. And create some variation on the second part. You know what? At the end we can go an octave higher, since C sounds good also an octave higher. At the end, we can also change note. As long as we are in the scale, and especially at the end, we don't have a piano bass note hitting, we can change note. And you know, we can add also a roll with the 808. Oh, that's crazy. But now I'm going to show you another trick before exporting your beat. Let's render one section. So I rendered the first part of the hook. If you double click, we can change the pitch. And let's see if you can find a pitch that sounds better. That's crazy. Nah, I liked it 1 semitone below. And now we can pitch everything down 1 semitone. I know it's a tedious process, you need to do that for everything, and also for the 808. We are not going to do that for the drums though. So we can split by channel also the drums, because we can arrange them too, and have them come in later. Let's render this part with Ctrl+C again, have the range to 12, so it's 1 octave, and create an automation clip. It's going to create something like that, and we can have the starting point at 0. That's crazy, man. Here we have a lot of energy. Let's have a pause here with the hi-hat. And we can remove the hat and the counter snare. We have a lot of space.